Earlier this week, Senate candidate Evan McMullin announced a major milestone, becoming the first independent candidate in Utah to raise more than $1 million in the first 3 months of his campaign. With the 2022 election still months away, he will face competition from both Democrats and Republicans, including incumbent Senator Mike Lee. But McMullin's campaign milestone has Fox 13's Bob Evans looking into the viability of independent and third-party candidates in our latest 360 report.
People are just looking for something new.
Evan McMullin sure hopes so, because what he's trying to do would be new for Utah.
Independents have won in other states. Lisa Murkowski ran and won as an independent in Alaska. Angus King in Maine. I mean, there are many examples. Yes, they're not well known by everyone, but people do win as independents.
McMullin is running for the Senate seat held by Mike Lee since 2011. He first attracted attention as an 11th hour presidential candidate in the 2016 election. Now he says his focus is on Utah's problems.
The high cost of healthcare, inflation, poor air quality, lack of water.
Official voter registration numbers released earlier this week show nearly 250,000 active Utah voters are registered Democrats. There are more than 850,000 Republicans. And the number of unaffiliated voters is nearly 500,000. For McMullin to win, he'll need those unaffiliated voters, along with some Republicans and Democrats willing to break ranks.
And because I'm running as an independent, it allows me to say the common sense things that many times candidates of one party or another can't say for one reason or another. It allows me to represent Utah.
In a very non-scientific poll, we stopped a few people on the streets of Salt Lake to ask whether they think an independent can win.
I think you either have to be Democrat or Republican. I haven't heard of very many people in the middle making it, but it'd be nice if they did.
If Mitt Romney were to run as an independent, I'd say there's a good chance that he could do it, or somebody well known and with an established reputation. But I think Evan McMullin would be a really long shot.
I'm more like in the middle versus like a strict Democrat or strict Republican. So if they aligned with more of what I thought, yeah, I'd definitely vote for them.
Can an independent win in Utah?
Yes, an independent can win in Utah. Is it likely that an independent will win in Utah? It depends on the circumstances.
Jim Bennett knows a thing or two about politics. His father was the late Utah Senator Bob Bennett.
The thing about politics is that money rules the day. And while it's impressive that Evan McMullin has raised $1.1 million, the reality is that Mike Lee is going to have an unlimited budget for re-election. And it's not going to come from campaign donations directly to his campaign. When Mike Lee ran against my father in 2010 when he was first elected, he didn't have a lot of money, but the Club for Growth came in and dumped millions of dollars into the pre-primary election. They didn't really care whether or not Mike Lee was elected. They just wanted to get rid of my dad and demonstrate that they were the kingmakers. And since that time, Mike Lee has done everything in his power to sort of suck up to those kinds of, money folks. And so he's going to have enough money, I think, that it's going to be a real uphill battle for Evan McMullin.
Bennett also co-founded the United Utah Party.
The reality is that you've got a one-party state, not a two-party state. The Democratic Party is not viable on a statewide level, which I think opens the door for another party to be able to sort of fill that void. And that's what we're hoping the United Utah Party can do. And, going forward, we've got a slate of candidates of people that I think are going to up the ante in terms of what's possible.
And we tend to see voters maybe early in election say, yeah, I'd consider this third party or independent candidate. But by the time we get to October, November, a lot of them go back home to the place where they usually vote.
James Curry is a professor of political science at the University of Utah and the Hinckley Institute of Politics. He says recent trends do not favor independent or third party candidates.
And while 1/3 of voters call themselves independents, most of them act just as partisan as people who call themselves Democratic and Republicans. While people say that they don't like the two-party system and they'll give a lot of unfavorable attitudes towards the two parties, they also mainly just really don't like one of the two parties most of the time. They may not love the other one, but they tend to really hate the one. And so the idea of going for an independent, and if it might risk putting someone in office from a party that you really, really hate, can sometimes draw people away from considering an independent candidate.
He says for an independent candidate to actually win,
you need to have such high name recognition that you don't necessarily need that party label to help you. And then you need enough voters to be interested in something that's different from the other parties at that moment in time.
McMullin campaigns on being different and believes he can connect with Utah voters in a fundamental way.
Part of why Utah is unique is that it has an independent streak. I mean, it has a lot to do with even our history, how we ultimately settled this state, or our state ancestors did.
I think if an independent is ever going to win, or a third party is ever going to win, now is the time when it would happen.
It's going to be really interesting to see what plays out, because clearly McMullin's going to go through this run in this candidacy. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Democrats respond to that. It's going to be interesting to see if we get a three-way race, and does that make things tighter? I'm really interested in watching it.
Bob Evans, Fox 13 News, Utah.